Hello, hello, and now we're doing chapter 15, the last one that we'll be covering in the class. Um, Social psychology is a really important topic. One of my best friends was a social psychologist, and we had many, many, many long discussions about things. When I was you guys, I went to the University of Scranton. The psych department was quite small. There was no social psychologist. So neither as as an undergraduate nor in graduate school did I take a course in social psychology, but I team taught research methods with my friend for decades and grew to like it very much. This opening vignette is pretty darn depressing. There are documentaries about this. Um, a religious cult, People's Temple. It did not end well. Uh, People still use, well, they in the textbook, it doesn't say drink the Kool-Aid, probably because Kool-Aid has lawyers and they don't want their product associated with mass suicides. Um, but I'm pretty sure that's what they put the poison in, and this was such a tragedy. Um, killing your children, killing yourself, killing the congressman on the runway, just lots of death. And there's Jim Jones, um, apparently a charismatic leader. And boy, they can lead to bad things, where you have one person basically taking over the minds of many, many people. Um, there's a little diagram about watching an interaction and uh, attitudes and attributions. What should you do? And the I do research on faces. I measure faces, and one piece of that research is mentioned in this chapter. And averaging faces. Originally, this was done by taking photographs of people back when the photographs were on glass plates. And to produce an average face, you stacked them and printed the result. And the original reason for doing the research didn't work out, but they definitely found that average faces are more attractive. And the symmetry is the face is the most complex, certainly visible part of our bodies that we can see, and getting a face correct is a trick. And the slings and arrows of infections and bad genes and womb environments, all of these can affect whether the face comes together uh, effectively. Of course, the same thing can be said for the brain, which is what my research is really about, faces and brains. And I've, I've been dealing with schizophrenia and homosexuality and personality. It's interesting. Evolutionary psychologists. There's a nice discussion there of why symmetry is is an important thing. Cultural differences. One thing that reduces how attractive you are real fast is facial blemishes. Of course, an evolutionary psychologist would say that they may indicate that your parasites are growing in you or something, which in the modern world is virtually never the case. But in our evolutionary history, um, that may have been true. Um, Baby faces, uh, you know, in terms of males, masculine faces, baby faces, we respond to them differently. And there's research that got me really going on faces. It was published in the journal Science, which in the United States is arguably number one. That's not what I want. And I've given you a link where you can actually read that article. Um, let's see, chapter 15 here. And this is a PDF of the Science article that got me going. Todorov was the first author, Alexander Todorov. Inferences of competence from faces predict election outcomes. And he gathered, or they gathered, campaign photos for everyone running for, I think, Congress and Senate in an appropriate year, 2004. If someone was too famous, they weren't included. I think Hillary Clinton was running, so she was not included because you weren't supposed to know who you were looking at. The findings suggest that rapid, unreflective trait inferences can contribute to voting choices, which are widely assumed to be based primarily on rational and deliberative considerations. This should remind you of Ledoux's high road and low road. We'd like to think that we vote based on the high road, but we make snap decisions, like a second or less, often much less than a second. And there's the faces, and that correlation is an awesome. What is the correlation around 0.5? I don't see it in there, but that looks like about maybe 0.4, 0.6. And the inferred competency and votes, and we go for competency, which is I vote a wise decision. So there are some of the data down there, and there's another nice correlation scattergram of simulated voting as a function of inferred competence. This was big news back in the day, and I would be shocked if political campaigns now are not modifying photographs of their candidates to increase the appearance of competence. And so this is related to what I've done, and there you go. Whoops. attributions are easy to make and hard to shake. Once you get a bias, you're prone to holding on to it. And attributions we make about a person's behavior, attribution theories, a set of ideas about how we explain our own behavior and the behavior of others, situation, disposition, all very important in terms of judging ourselves and others. And there's the fundamental attribution error, the tendency to explain other people's behavior based on their dispositions rather than the situation. So, the person puts the item in the wrong bin because he didn't see the signs, but watching him do it, you decide he's a jerk. And this is a very well-researched and fairly powerful contributor to our belief in other people. And even when you know people are arguing a position because they were told to, like this research on Fidel Castro, if they argue in favor of Fidel Castro, you tend to believe that they loved Fidel. Inheriting political views, the big five personality factors, some of them are related to political views. And these data here also contribute more data indicating that there is, it's not overwhelming, but there's a real contribution of genes to political orientations. The Great Depression, Cold War, my mother and my grandmother were affected by the Great Depression, and that really changed them. I remember going to school thinking that there were going to be atomic bombs being dropped on us during the day. Parents would say goodbye to their children thinking they may never see them again. That can have, and we used to have drills where you'd be out playing and bomb sirens would go off and you'd have to duck and cover or run home. That was pretty real. Actor-observer bias, the tendency to explain away our own mistakes by attributing them to the environment, but to attribute the mistakes of others to their disposition. We don't give others the benefit of the doubt. Self-serving bias, the tendency to attribute our successes to our dispositions and our failures to external factors. We love ourselves, and it's sometimes hard to convince ourselves that we've made a mistake or that we're not perfect. Cultural differences, that's an interesting difference there between how Americans interpret that picture and Chinese. Different cultures are definitely different. Individualism, collectivism, the other end of the spectrum. And there's a graph of different cultures, and you can see that we're way up there on individualism scores, whereas China, Guatemala, Mexico, even Russia, much lower. There are still individual differences within all these cultures, however, and the different cultures within a culture can affect our behavior, and this is an interesting discussion about maternal and paternal contributions to uh, situation and disposition. And there are differences. There's been a movie made about this, the Stanford Prison Study. One of my former students was obsessed with the person who did this study and tried to track down his house in San Francisco. Philip Zimbardo. He wrote textbooks which she had used, and she liked social, and he did social. And boy, did this study come off the rails fast. Just random students given roles as prisoners or guards, and the study was supposed to run for 2 weeks. I think they had to call it quits after something like 6 days because it was getting too ugly. Second day, study began to break down. It was bad. And one thing that's important about a few studies in this chapter is they should teach us how dangerous humans can be. You give people uniforms and tell them to go march somewhere and take something over. Let's do that. Good plan. Hoodoos and Tooties. The Tutsis, sorry. 800,000 people killed in Rwanda. These are all very real to me. And they're basically the same people. And yet one subset of them slaughtered the other subset. Abu Ghraib. This is Iraq. And Iraqi prisoners probably attributed the misconduct of their guards to Americans being evil. And we did behave evilly. Don't forget the Stanford prison experiment. But the guards probably attributed their own misconduct to the pressures of the situation. Now, I've given you a link, but by the way, these are males and females, and these are National Guards people, and I am almost certain that a Scrantonian female was one of these guards. And she came back to campus after this adventure. I've given you a link. This is rough. This is not for the faint of heart. I mean, look at what our red-blooded American National Guardsmen did. It's unbelievable what they did. Threatening people with dogs, making them be naked, taking selfies with them. Unbelievable. And again, the National Guard is not evil, but certain situations encourage this kind of behavior. And if you're in charge of, for example, soldiers, and you're not well trained in psychology, and you think that they'll just be good red-blooded Christian Americans and not do anything bad, you are mistaken. And the people in charge have a serious moral obligation to stop this kind of stuff from happening. And I think that's about the end of the horrible pictures. Cognitive dissonance is less awful. This next research is one of the classics. So everybody does this task. It's kind of boring. Some people get paid $20, which back in the day was a bunch of money, and they were paid $20 to tell the next person coming in that it was kind of interesting. And then the third person is given $1 to tell the person coming in that this was kind of interesting. And they asked them, how enjoyable was the task? And if you're not asked to lie, you don't like it too much. If you got paid $20, you're sort of, unaffected, because I know why I told that person it was kind of fun, because you gave me $20. There's no cognitive dissonance there. But do you lie for $1? Do you mislead people for $1? No, actually, I don't. And yeah, I told that person it was interesting. You know why? Because it was interesting. And cognitive, the bottom on this page, cognitive dissonance can also help explain the behavior of few American soldiers at Abu Ghraib in Iraq. And then there's some other phenomena that are related: buyer's remorse, effort justification, paying more for something you like it more, hazing, which is oh so popular. You make it very difficult to get into an organization. And if you go through hazing, arguably within limits, the more awful, the better. Once you're in, oh, I love this place. This is such a good fraternity or sorority. Yeah. And the data down below on the Toyota and the Lexus is interesting too. Humans can be manipulated, no doubt about it. Self-handicapping, I've seen this, where people make it difficult for themselves to succeed. In a ball toss game, people who are prone to this either get ridiculously close, so it's not a challenge, or stand so far away that there's no real expectation of hitting the target with the ball toss. And here there's a discussion of students procrastinating, and they don't get good grades. But I didn't study much. I'm sure if I studied more, I would get better grades. Stereotypes. We love stereotypes, particularly if it makes other people inferior to us. Prejudices like other social attitudes affect our behavior towards others, can lead to discrimination. Oh, you think? And this is important. Yeah, we're talking about different, black people being more likely to be shot. Well, if they're in the criminal justice system, they're more likely to get the death penalty, particularly if the victim was white. We discriminate, and we have to admit it, and we have to deal with it. You can't just ignore it. You're putting people in jail for life or killing them, often because of prejudices. And how dark the skin is of the African American. The darker the skin, the more likely it is that something bad will happen to them in the criminal justice system. And, these are correlational data, um, but the data are pretty overwhelming. The rated how black looking the faces were, the same range of crimes. Men who had been rated as stereotypically black got the death penalty more than twice as often as light-skinned African Americans. Jeez. And we have a criminal justice system that is supercharged. Um, these are not a few people that are being chewed up by the criminal justice system. There are tons. And now the implicit association task. And there's Jesse Jackson. And he's biased. So the implicit associations affect cognition. So you have a black face, and then you have to react to different words. And if you see a black face, you end up with a bias towards negative terms. And participants readily associate white faces with good attributes and find it harder to associate black faces with good attributes. They need more time to sort the words. The difficulty of association good with black faces is interpreted to mean that people unknowingly harbor prejudice. And again, Ledoux's high road, low road. And if you're a police officer and you feel your life is in jeopardy and you have to make a life and death decision about whether to shoot someone, this is really, really, really relevant. And look what I have for you. You can take this test online. I forget how long it takes. You might allow yourself an hour, but you can get scored on your implicit association. You can get scored on the implicit association test. These tests show that racial and gender too stereotypes common in our society become deeply embedded in our brain's function. And what bad could happen? Well, you shoot somebody, for example. There have been debates about the validity of the IAT, but I think the weight of evidence indicates it's definitely worth continuing to take fairly seriously. Stereotype threat, a phenomenon occurring when exposure to a derogatory stereotype about a group causes the group to perform worse. We've seen this already in the intelligence chapter, and the data that were reviewed before. I think, well, it's racial and it's gender. And this is a former president of Harvard. There are three broad hypotheses about the very substantial disparities. This is about women in competitive science/math positions. One is what I would call the high-powered job hypothesis. The second is what I would call different availability of aptitude at the high end. And the third is what I would call different socialization and patterns of discrimination. And in my own view, their importance probably ranks in exactly the order just described. Um, you know, maybe you don't want the job. Maybe you have to be weirdly good at something to do certain like physics and math, and then the social discrimination. Uh, Summers 2005, he had to resign as president of Harvard not long after that. And there was an interesting debate between Steven Pinker, who I've mentioned before, and another researcher about this issue. And I led a discussion of that debate. I sort of like the Steven Pinker side of things. Um, Stereotype, threat, women and men. Uh, Stereotype threat presented, and women's performance declined. And oh, geez, uh, vanishing gender difference in math. So one thing that's important to look at is the orange mustard bars, women's freedom. And women are very free in Norway and Iceland. In the US isn't bad, but it could be better. And the green bar, if it's below zero, the women test worse. Turkey, Italy, United States somewhat, Norway a bit, Iceland, the women do better. But look at reading. Uh, Women are better. They're just better no matter what the culture. The social norms, normative social influence, the pressure to behave and behave like the rest of your community. And Solomon Asch did classic research in this area. And by the way, this guy in the middle, who is allegedly the only real participant in the study, everybody else is supposed to be cohorts. These movies were made to demonstrate the phenomenon, and he shows up in a later movie, but it's not very threatening. I show you A, and having shown you A, I show you ABC, and you have to pick which line ABC is closest to the original line, and it's a pretty easy task. They set it up so you get like 90% or above accuracy. But the trick here is, and our guy goes last, the real participant, is that after a few rounds of non-threatening, everybody agrees, suddenly everybody in the room picks the wrong answer. And the issue is, do you now sell out? Do you would have gotten it right if you had gone first, for example, but you go with the other people. Uh, so we want to fit in, and even if it means saying something is true when it's not. Then there's a discussion of the chameleon effect. Salespeople are taught to do this sometimes. The tendency to mimic postures, mannerisms, facial expressions, and other behaviors. Um, People who act like you tend to like better, unless you figure out they're doing it on purpose, and then you don't like them very much. Social facilitation, even in cockroaches. So cockroaches in a group will scurry away faster than if they're together. And having people watch certain kinds of behaviors anywhere, anyway, you do better. And there's a table on the next page. Expectation of evaluation can help or hinder. So if it's an easy task, you have a supportive audience, you get better. But if you have a difficult task, critical audiences can really hurt you. And there's a discussion in here of pool players who are good. The audience actually can help them. So it's an interaction between the environment and the individual and the nature of the task. And speaking of sales, using social facilitation for persuasion, foot in the door. Salespeople are taught to do this for sure. And there's a really good example on the next page. Even a penny would help. And people who said that not only did the teams using the script get more people to donate, but they also gathered twice as much money. So these are powerful tools. Not that anyone does door-to-door sales anymore. And then there's door in the face technique, which is sort of the flip side, where you start off with something ridiculous, like we'd like to put a billboard in your front yard for a political candidate, and the person says, "Oh, geez, no, no billboards." Well, how about just a little, 2x1 sign? Oh, okay. And there's Calvin showing it doesn't work. Can I set fire to my bed? No. Can I ride my tricycle off the roof? No. Can I have a cookie? No. She's on to me. Group behavior is very interesting. And of course, juries are group behavior. Social loafing, shirking responsibility because of being in a group, diffusion of responsibility, less likely to take action if others are available, bystander effect, the tendency of each person in an emergency to expect others to intervene. These are real. There's nice discussions of them here. And Kitty Genovese, this story has been part of psychology textbooks since the late 60s. Apparently, we may have gotten the story partially wrong, but it's also partially right. And here we go. Rioting, de-individuation. This is particularly true, if you've got masks or everybody's wrapped in a flag and you're not so much an individual anymore. And you're more likely to, if you're anonymous, to do bad things. De-individuation, the psychological process of losing your own individual identity and coming to identify with the crowd. Groupthink, the tendency to agree with one another and make faulty decisions. And Mark tells the story about his own campus and events after basketball games, which are sometimes not bad, but sometimes they're very bad, and they turn into riots. This is so important. So important. Our our elected officials really, really, really need to know this stuff. And, the 2004 bipartisan Senate report, when we decided that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction and we invaded them, groupthink caused analysts to interpret ambiguous data as conclusively showing that we're weapons of mass destruction. And boy, you see a lot of groupthink after the last election, I'll tell you. So factors that favor teamthink or help avoid groupthink. So try to avoid being in column A under groupthink. Be part of the teamthink crowd. And anonymous ballots, suggestion boxes can help people break out of things. Of course, in the ASH research, if the person was writing down their opinion privately, they would not have been swayed by their cohorts because they wouldn't know if they believed. And research sort of like that has been done with that paradigm. Prisoner's Dilemma. This is in the news a lot, and I'm not going to read it, but you take a look at it. There's a 2x2 table, so you have two prisoners, and each of them can either confess or remain silent. And what do? And we hate to lose things. Don't forget that. But the best thing is for both of them to remain silent and get charged with a misdemeanor, and out the door you go. But they tend not. A lot of people tend to succumb to the pressure and confess, even though they didn't do it. That's a cute story. While Stalin is ruling Russia, the secret police arrest an orchestra conductor because they suspect the musical score he is studying of Tchaikovsky's Violin Concerto is really a secret code. They bring him in for questioning, where he insists it's genuine music and nothing else. But then another policeman enters and says, "You might as well confess. We've got Tchaikovsky in the next room, and he's already talking." Yeah, fat chance. And here's the prisoner's dilemma, but done with money, depending on whether you push the button or not. You start with 20 and you have different outcomes. Both people would be better off not pushing the button, not confessing, but each has a strong motivation to push it to avoid losing money, because we hate to lose money. Prisoner's dilemma arises because the participants cannot communicate with each other. Of course, when they can, things change. Altruism. I have a killer lecture on altruism that you won't get to hear, unfortunately. Evolutionary psychology offers an explanation for altruism, helping others without expectation of repayment. Now, this emphasizes being related to people. I think being altruistic is part of basic human behavior. And that's part of my lecture, which I can't give you. Inclusive fitness is relevant to the genetic discussion. How successful individuals are spreading their own genes in any fashion, including benefiting relatives. Grandmothers, particularly maternal grandmothers, behave very altruistically to grandchildren. And of course, if the grandchildren live and succeed, the grandmother's genes live and succeed. and inclusive fitness and ground squirrels, they're more likely to give alarm calls if they're in the vicinity of relatives. And yeah, altruism is not unnatural. Uh, some people point to altruism as humans as proof that we've overcome our evolutionary past. And I would gently suggest that ain't necessarily so. Social exchange theory, uh, that when we help others, they may help us in return. Sure, but I think it's more hardwired than that. Neuroeconomics has become big of late, like Nobel Prize big, and neuroeconomics offers a new way of studying uh, human influence. Kahneman, Nobel Prize 2002, and there's again, we hate loss far more than we enjoy gain. Uh, we become loss averse, and there's the interesting discussion of having stock in either, I think, Google or GM, and which would you get rid of? And we often don't behave very wisely. Friends, common and in common and reciprocate. Um, Facebook friends. There's a little cartoon. I love our nights in together, just you, me, and our 756 friends. Uh, the two people on the couch are legitimate friends. And there's a discussion of what's important to friendships. Uh, frenemies, people who display such ambivalences, acting very friendly at one time and then hostile another, are sometimes referred to as frenemies, a mixture of friend and enemy. Um, having friends is good. Social support, definitely important. And there are some powerful data. Single people tend to be less happy and more anxious than married people. Uh, life satisfaction below zero, happy yesterday below zero, anxious yesterday above zero. Married people tend to be happier and healthier. But when you get married, may be pretty important. Marriages early in life are less likely to be happy. So there you have the woman's age at marriage, below 20, 20 to 23, 24, 26, etc. And look at that spike at 24 to 26. And over 30 doesn't look good either, but they don't get divorced as much. But under 20, divorce is pretty darn high. And don't forget that divorce is a stressor. Making a marriage last, there's a table from Gottman and Silver, and then there's this 7 uh, element theory of attraction or love by Sternberg. Liking, infatuation, empty love, romantic love, companionate love, fatuous love, and what you should be looking for, consummate love. And there's some pretty good data on this as well. So the 3 points of the triangle are intimacy, commitment, and passion. A lot of good stuff in this chapter. little disjointed, but there's a lot of good stuff. Aggression, behavior intended to cause physical or psychological harm or pain, and then testosterone and androgens in general are discussed as being important. And there are data that elevated testosterone levels can be associated with increased aggression and prenatal exposure to androgens, as we've already seen, affect the brain. And of course, the brain is important to adult behavior, particularly when androgens are around. And there's antlers in deer and lots of data in non-humans, less so in humans, but there we have castrated mice, no hormone, high dose, medium dose, low dose, no hormone. So biting attacks are definitely elevated by having testosterone on board. That's an important point at the beginning of the second paragraph. In humans, testosterone seems more related to social dominance than overall aggression. And then there's a discussion of athletes and winning and losing in sports, and even winning and losing in chess, and dealing with circulating androgens. Winning, your testosterone levels go up. And the issue of roid rage, I think that's pretty real. There have been a few controlled laboratory studies, most of which indicate men taking anabolic steroids do indeed experience greater levels of irritability and aggression. And that's not good for society. Aggression can be planned or impulsive, controlled or instrumental aggression, carefully planned out, reactive aggression, road rage. Lots of aggression is of this type. Some guy wanted to kill me in a bar because I made eye contact. He was on edge. Frontal lobes are important. And again, think about Ledoux and the high road and the low road. If your frontal lobes are functional, they can reduce aggression. Evidence that people with a history of reactive aggression are more fearful. And angry faces can affect the brain. Oxytocin may inhibit aggression and reduce amygdala activation. Genes, and we're getting into the serotonin and MAO, monoamine oxidase. MAO is an enzyme that decreases serotonin, and it's been implicated in reactive impulsive aggression. And there's that Dutch family that they've studied pretty heavily that have this genetic difference that seems to be related to increase aggression. Social factors affecting aggression. You want to live in a country where there's a lot of violence, you're there. A little bit north of us in Canada, there's a lot less. And video violence and aggression, I've highlighted Bushman A Scrantonian went to grad school where he was a mentor, and she did some of the research with him on aggression. Uh, Here, they talk about using like an air horn to punish someone. Uh, I helped them pick hot sauce uh, to punish people, and that's important research. And there's reasons to worry about this a bit, not with average people, but certainly with some people. Punishment. Uh, as a nation, Americans like to blame people and punish them. No civilization in history has ever imprisoned such a high proportion of its citizens as the United States. If we correct for inflation, uh, we spend less on schools than we do on prisons. We really need to get our act together in regard to this. So there's proportion of citizens in prison. We're still ahead of Russia and El Salvador. A lot of people in prisons. And yeah, why do we do punishment? Deterrence, the use of punishment to persuade people not to display certain behaviors. Protection, the use of punishment to constrain a person's freedom so she can't hurt others. Retribution, the punishment of a person beyond the need for deterrence or protection. And our criminal justice system and Americans in general are very into retribution and authority. This is some of the most important research in the chapter. And juries come up, and how people in the jury can sway the jury. Studies of groupthink. A, a single strongly pervasive person may influence the outcome of a jury. I'm a fan of juries, but uh, they're not perfect. Nothing's perfect. Stanley Milgram. After World War II, some people were saying, what's wrong with those Germans? What the heck is wrong with the Germans? Why did they allow that bad stuff to happen? So Milgram at Yale started doing some research on response to authority, and he started off with regular undergraduates. And you had the investigator in their white lab coat, and two people would come in, allegedly both participants, but one of them was a cohort, sort of like the ASH research, and there's only one real participant. And the ads for the study said it was about learning, and they wanted to improve learning, and they wanted to know if punishment for incorrect answers could improve learning. That's what it was supposed to be about. So the shock generator was way scary. 30 switches, each labeled from 15 volts to 450. The last two were marked XXX, and the highest was labeled danger, severe shock. I mean, this looked legit, and the participants certainly thought it was legit. So there's the experimenter, there's the teacher, who's the only real participant in the study, and there's the Confederate who is strapped to the chair with electrodes attached to them. And to my eye, this guy here looks a lot like the guy in the ASH study. So this is not from the real study. It's from a movie they made to demonstrate the study. But there's your middle-aged learner being strapped to a chair, and he's already confided that he has some heart issues. And boy, nobody did a good job of predicting how willing people were to shock this guy into oblivion. And that, they had tape recorded responses from that were played through the wall, and the teacher would just quietly say, "Please continue. The experiment requires that you continue. It's essential that you continue. You have no choice. You must go on." And this is just some random guy in a white coat, and about 65% of people, and they started off with undergraduates, but then they also went out into the environment around Yale and got more participants. The Germans weren't weird, I'll tell you. What's weird about the Germans is they were humans, and they were willing to follow orders. And I think I've given you some pictures of the equipment. Look at that baby. So there's all these little switches and lights, and very strong shock going up to XXX. That thing looks really real. It was a beast. And there's the picture from your book. And I think this pretty clearly is the person from the ASH video. Here's a situation where the participant had to hold the hand down. That did reduce compliance. This guy was complaining. He was not happy. I think he still kept going though, and he believed it, and he was stressed. These are very sobering studies. We are come on. We are a dangerous species. Dude. Yeah, these were. I mean, in 63, I was not in graduate school, but this is powerful stuff. And there have been variations, whether the teacher is in the room or not, and touching the person, and whether there are multiple teachers, and do any of them break from authority. If someone breaks from authority, so do you. So one person standing up against bad things happening can free people from their compliance. There's discussions of people breaking with authority. Women were just as likely to want to do this, and if you isolated the teacher where they didn't have to flip the switches, it was even worse. Likewise, the many German citizens who ran the trains, kept utilities working, went to work in the factories supplying the war, surely felt they bore no responsibility for what happened in the death camps. Bad. And Jonestown comes up again, killing your own children. This is trying to deal with the obedience experiment in virtual reality. Every time I teach this chapter, I am blown away by the implications of this chapter for human social behavior. And I had forgotten about the Scrantonian female at Abu Ghraib. It's not a gender issue. We did bad things. There's no denying it. And Milgram's research is very important. So that's the end of this adventure. You're taking the final today, so I won't say anything about that. Thanks for stopping by. I hope you had a good time.